Even if you straight up ignore everything else, okay, every other little muscle building nutrition tip and all these other YouTube videos that you find, and you just focus on these 3 things, you will build muscle at or near your maximum potential, not to mention that it's gonna make your life a hell of a lot simpler in the process as well. What's up guys, Sean Alawani, RealScienceAthletics.com, and today we're talking about effective muscle building nutrition, and specifically we're going to cut through the BS and boil things down to the 3 most important steps that you need to follow, okay? The 3 nutritional steps that truly matter in the real world and that are going to be responsible for the vast majority of your gains. Now, nutrition is a subject that can be overanalyzed and overcomplicated to death, and that's exactly what so many of these experts here on YouTube try to do. They give you a million different little guidelines and hacks that you supposedly must follow in order to get results, and all it does is confuse people, create more dietary anxiety, and make the process that much more difficult. And a lot of the time, these experts don't even truly understand the terms they're using in the first place, and they're basically just reading them off a teleprompter in order to sound intelligent.
Ketones are also what is called a histone deacetylase inhibitor. Insulin is anti-catabolic because it decreases what is called the ubiquitin-mediated proteasome activity. That's just simple. That just has to do with something called the S-GLUT1 transporter. A20 directly prevents the modulation of nuclear factor kappa B.
So check this out, though. First of all, you're throwing too many big words at me. Okay, now, because I don't understand them, I'm going to take them as disrespect.
Foods you must eat, foods you must avoid, foods you must combine, foods you must never combine, the perfect macronutrient ratio, the exact time of day to eat, the times of day when you must never eat, etc., etc., etc. It sounds compelling that this stuff is delivered using the right terminology and supposed scientific references, but in reality, most of this stuff is just unnecessary overcomplication. And the more complicated you make things, the higher your chances for long-term failure are going to be, because the less likely it'll be that you'll actually stick to your diet long-term. Not to mention that it will just make your day-to-day life a more stressful experience because you're constantly trying to micromanage every little thing that you consume. The goal should be to make things only as complex as they absolutely need to be. Before I dive into it, if you enjoy my content, then please just do me one small favor and hit that like button below, because it really helps get this video out to more people so that they can get the proper guidance they need as well. And it also keeps me motivated to keep on producing this free content. So spank that like button and let's get started. Okay, number 1 on the list, the most important factor for effective muscle building nutrition is consuming sufficient protein. Yes, I know that's not the groundbreaking advice that most people want to hear. It's not very exciting, but this here isn't about giving people what they want to hear. It's about giving them what they actually need to hear. Okay, number 1 is protein. Now, if your goal is to lose body fat, then total calories would be the number 1 factor, because you can't lose fat without being in a calorie deficit. But when it comes to muscle growth, technically it is possible to build muscle whether you're in a calorie deficit or a calorie surplus, as long as you have a proper training stimulus in place and you're eating enough protein. And so that's why I would consider protein as the primary factor. If there's one thing you absolutely must do, it's to consume enough high quality protein to support muscle recovery and growth. And fortunately, this is actually pretty easy to do. I've mentioned this guideline a million times before, but around 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight each day is all you're gonna need to gain muscle at your full potential. If you wanna go higher than that, just out of preference, that's totally fine, but 0.8 grams is a safe minimum when it comes to maximizing your gains. And as long as you're basing your main meals around some sort of central protein source, like most people already do, you know, a basic protein and carb pairing, and then maybe some optional vegetables or optional healthy fats, depending on how you're choosing to lay things out. If you're doing that, then hitting that 0.8 gram figure is usually pretty easy to do. For a 125 pound person, that's 100 grams of protein daily. For 150 pounds, it's 120 grams, 175 pounds, is 140 grams, and then 200 pounds would be 160 grams. And since protein needs are technically based on lean mass, if you're more on the overweight side, then you can go even lower at around 0.7 or even 0.6 grams per pound of body weight, depending on just how much body fat you're carrying. And if hitting those numbers is difficult for you for whatever reason, then you can just add some protein powder in to very easily increase your protein intake. You know, if you're having 1 to 2 scoops of protein powder a day in combination with your regular solid food sources, then hitting that 0.8 gram figure should not be a problem at all. For me, I just put 1 scoop in my oatmeal in the morning and then 1 scoop in my yogurt at night. Combine that with 2 solid food sources during the day, and getting enough protein is a complete non-issue. Forget about all these crazy guidelines some people give you telling you that you have to consume 250 or 300 grams plus of protein per day.
At least 40% of your calories have to come from protein. I drink a shitload of shakes. I do 3, sometimes 4 shakes a day.
If you want to consume that much and it fits into your total calories, then that's fine, but it's not a must, and we've got plenty of data now to support that more moderate protein intakes are enough to maximize protein synthesis, and we have more than enough real-world evidence for this as well. Now, keep in mind that you can only stimulate protein synthesis up to a certain limit after a single protein feeding, and so for the very best results, you ideally don't want to be lumping all of your protein down into one single meal, but this usually is not an issue since very, very few people would even want to do that in the first place. I'd say that 2 separate protein feedings per day should be the minimum. Some people who are doing intermittent fasting might fall into that category, and that for fully optimal muscle building nutrition, you should try to space your protein out into 3 or more individual feedings. Now, total protein intake for the day as a whole is by far the most important thing. So even if you did only eat 1 single meal or 2 meals, you're still going to achieve great results, don't get me wrong. But if maximum muscle growth is your goal, then go for 3 or more separate protein feedings per day so that you're stimulating protein synthesis multiple times. From there, the rest of your macronutrient breakdown is really just going to be a matter of personal preference. There's no magical carb to fat ratio that you must follow. You know, if you want to eat a bit more carbs and a bit less fat, or a bit more fat and a bit less carbs, that's fine. As long as the total calorie content is the same, then the specific way that you lay your macronutrients out is not going to matter at the end of the day. Just make sure that you're getting in enough protein. Trying to micromanage things down to the exact macro is totally unnecessary. For most people, it'll just create more stress and increase the chances for dietary burnout. Okay, if you want to roughly estimate, that's fine, but as long as the total protein is there, then the rest should just be laid out based on your own individual preference. And by the way, if you're tired of all the confusing and conflicting nutrition advice out there and you want to grab a free step-by-step program that will show you how to structure not just your diet but also your training as well for the very best results based on your goals and your current condition, then after this video is over, you can head over to seannall.com/custom, fill out the form on that page, and I'll send you back a free custom plan that you can follow. The link is up here and down in the description box below. All right, step number 2 involves calories. Once again, nothing special or groundbreaking here, but what we're doing here is simplifying things down to what truly matters in the real world and not just overcomplicating things for the sake of it. Now, like I said before, if you're eating enough protein and you're training properly and your calories aren't excessively low, then whether you're in a deficit or a surplus, you're still ultimately going to gain muscle to some degree. Gaining muscle in a deficit is especially doable if you're starting out more on the overweight side and you've got a lot of stored fat that can be used as extra muscle building fuel, or if you're a beginner and weight training is a novel stimulus, or if you are a more experienced lifter and you're returning from a training layoff. However, if your body fat is already within a low to moderate range and you're past that newbie phase, then you do need to be in a calorie surplus if your goal is to put on muscle and gain strength at your maximum potential. Yes, you can still gain muscle at maintenance or in a deficit to some extent, even if you are more experienced, but just because you can gain muscle in a deficit, it doesn't mean that it's going to be optimal. And I think a lot of people overlook that. You know, they just hear this idea that you can gain muscle without a surplus, and they just take it at face value without considering that, yes, you can gain muscle without a surplus, but with a surplus, you're going to gain muscle more effectively. If you're training hard in the gym and you're trying to pack overall size and strength onto your frame at the fastest rate, you need those extra calories to enhance your recovery and give your body all the raw materials that it needs to build muscle at its maximum potential. You are not going to build muscle at your maximum potential if you're in a deficit and you're already relatively lean. However, just like with protein, you really don't need that much. Okay, you don't need a huge surplus where you're force feeding yourself all day long and slamming weight gain shakes and trying to cram in extra calories at every possible opportunity. 200 to 300 calories above maintenance per day is enough to gain muscle at your full potential. And as I've said so many times before, going beyond that amount is not necessary, and it's actually counterproductive because the extra calories are just going to be stored as fat. Now, 200 to 300 calories is obviously not a huge amount, so you don't necessarily need to be tracking this precisely. You know, for a lot of people out there, the weight training that they do is just going to naturally spike their appetite up a bit, and then they'll just automatically eat a bit more during the day without even really thinking about it. And as long as they don't go overboard on total calories, they'll still consistently gain muscle without putting on excessive fat and without having to specifically track their calories. However, the main point here is to just be aware that if you want to gain muscle optimally, you do need to be eating in a calorie surplus, and that calorie surplus should be relatively modest to prevent excessive fat gain. You shouldn't be putting on any more than about 2 to 3 pounds per month at the most, and about half that amount for females. If your progress has stalled, you're not gaining body weight, your strength is plateaued in the gym, then it means that you're not in a calorie surplus and you need to bump your food intake up slightly. And as a side note, if you're not putting on weight and you're finding it hard to get in all the calories that you need each day, aside from just eating more food in general, one simple thing you can do is to just increase your fat intake. Fats have more than twice the caloric value of protein and carbs, and they have the lowest thermic effect as well. And so adding in some more fat to your diet is a very easy way to bump your calories up without having to consume very large volumes of food. Nuts, nut butters, seeds, healthy oils, coconut oil, dark chocolate. These are all really good sources that you can add in for some easy extra calories. And if you want to get some ideas in terms of calculating your current calorie maintenance level, then I'll link an older video of mine down in the description box, which explains how you can get an initial starting point in place for yourself. And if you're getting value from this video so far and you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to stay in the loop on all of my future uploads. And lastly, we've got point number 3, the third muscle building nutrition guideline on the list. This is just something that I recommend in general to anybody on a fitness plan of any kind, just for the sake of optimal overall health and performance, and that is to base the bulk of your diet around nutrient-dense, minimally processed whole foods. You don't need to obsess over this idea of eating clean 24/7. Okay, you can still have your favorite treat foods in moderation. You can still have cheat meals or even full cheat days here and there as long as you don't go overboard. But the majority of your diet, try to get that from whole foods. There are no individual foods you must eat. There are no muscle building superfoods. Okay, none of that nonsense. Just focus on whatever minimally processed whole foods you most prefer. And if you do sign up for the custom program over at SeanNell.com/custom, I'll provide you with a sample meal plan and a list of foods that you can use as a reference. Now, if your primary goal is fat loss, then this guideline is especially important because whole foods are going to help to keep you satiated while you're in a calorie deficit. But for most people who are actively focusing on gaining muscle and they're eating in a surplus, generally that isn't going to be a big factor. It might be for some people, but the main reason for this guideline for eating whole foods is to make sure that you're getting in the fiber and the vitamins and the minerals that you need for maximum health and performance and recovery. And as an estimation, something like 80 to 90% clean food and then 10 to 20% treat food, that's a good realistic breakdown that will cover all of your general health needs while giving you the dietary flexibility to live a normal life and enjoy your favorite foods and go out and have a restaurant meal with your friends without worrying about it. Maybe have a few drinks here and there if you desire. Okay, you don't need to be perfect with your nutrition. That's only going to create unnecessary stress and it's not going to get you better results anyway. And if you want to fully round this out and make sure that your micronutrient needs and your omega-3 needs are being fully met, then I would recommend checking out MicroCore and O3 Prime. These are from my sports nutrition line, Real Science Athletics, and I personally use them every day to make sure that my nutrition is 100% on point. MicroCore is our multivitamin that was tailored specifically to hard training lifters with the most important vitamins and minerals they require in the highest quality forms and optimal dosages. And then O3 Prime is our re-esterified triglyceride fish oil, which is the highest quality form you can get to ensure that your EPA and DHA levels are in the ideal range. And these are two compounds that have pretty much an endless list of different benefits in the body. So this is a really solid pairing to round out your overall eating plan, and you can visit realscienceathletics.com for those. You can click up here for that or use the link in the description box, and you can use coupon code YouTube15 to save 15% off your first order. So when it comes to the question of how to eat to gain muscle effectively, as unsexy as those steps might be, they really are the main things that you need to focus on. Even if you straight up ignore everything else, okay, every other little muscle building nutrition tip and all these other YouTube videos that you find, and you just focus on these 3 things, you will build muscle at or near your maximum potential, not to mention that it's going to make your life a hell of a lot simpler in the process as well. Consume enough daily protein, eat in a small calorie surplus, and base your diet mainly around minimally processed whole foods. That is the vast majority of the nutrition side of things right there. I'm not saying that those are the only contributing factors and that you can't tweak things further and experiment a bit to find what is absolutely ideal for you as an individual, but no matter how you slice it, these are the primary factors that are going to be responsible for the vast majority of your results in the real world. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to hit the like button if you found this advice helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all of my latest videos. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you want to see me cover next. And you can also follow me over on Instagram as well for more daily tips at Sean Nalawani. Thanks again, guys, and I will see you in the next video.